The reviews are in for Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup at Bellabelle Park. Yeah, that's the entire title. It's insane. I still can't believe they went with that. But yep, all the reviews are in for this new Switch 2 Edition for Mario Wonder, which came out just about 3 years ago. So if you're new to this type of video, what I do is I take a bunch of video reviews, I listen to them, and I bring together all the details that were very important about those reviews and what a lot of people thought all together. So just cramming different reviews to give you one ultimate score and kind of my early thoughts and thoughts that I had when I played the little store demo as well. So I'll include my thoughts at the end, but today's reviews are coming from IGN, Nintendo Life, and Nintenduo respectively. Now here's a list of some of the major reviews right here. You have some 10s, of course, from like Player 2 and Metro. You have some middle of the roads with some 8s from IGN and also from Tech Radar and Screen Rant, and then you have some lower scores like a 7 from GameSpot and a pretty low 6 from Nintendo Life, and we'll talk about that when we get to the review here in a second. Now for the Metacritic score, the original game on Switch 1 got a 92 and was rewarded a Metacritic Must Play badge. Jumping over to the brand new Switch 2 edition, it's dropped to an 86. So what caused it to drop 6 points from its original score? It has to do with the fact that it is just a Switch 2 edition that just adds a little bit of content at the price of $20, but also some other things that didn't land favorably with a lot of reviewers. Now the review that we're going to start off with here today is coming from IGN. They start off the review talking about the boss battles. So we learned about the new bosses in this game, and they are phenomenal apparently, with more than 3 hit fights. Yes, I've even tested this out on the demo, and against the very first fight with Wendy, I noticed that it added a pretty significant extra phase that allowed you to hit the boss a total of 6 times instead of 3. So that's always a benefit for Mario bosses, but apparently these are some of the best boss fights in the entire 2D Mario franchise. There's even apparently harder versions later on that are actually tough. Now, I'm not quite sure based on this wording, does it mean that there's, harder versions of every single boss, or is it just bosses get harder as you continue? But if every boss has a harder variant of that same boss fight, that would be pretty cool. There are 70 Toad Brigade missions that you can play by yourself or with friends as well. I'm probably going to be playing this one by myself, but they can actually get pretty difficult towards the end. Some of them are very unique as well that will have you like not touching any enemies or collecting any items in a stage. There's even some that might combine 2 different badges, like make you invisible or allow you to keep hopping at the same time, which makes some of the levels change drastically. Now, I believe every single level from the challenges are the exact same levels that are in the game already. They're just remixed levels, which is kind of sucky, but still, I mean, what'd you expect? Logan from IGN claimed that it took him 6 hours to 100% the training camp and wished that there were even more missions to complete. This was actually surprising to me as well. From what I could see and from hearing that there's 70 missions, 6 hours is a pretty significant amount of time. I mean, just to complete the main story of Super Mario Wonder without 100%ing it, it takes about 10 to 15 hours. So 6 hours of just badge missions is pretty cool. Oddly enough, from what I could capture from every reviewer that I've listened to so far, no one's quite mentioned how long it takes to complete the Koopaling stuff in single player. From my gameplay, it was relatively quick. I've heard that the levels are quick, but I just don't know how long the whole Koopaling thing is in single player's adventure. But now we start getting into the downfall of this DLC, which is the multiplayer aspect, because the co-op games are apparently the best according to IGN, and the rest of the games get stale. Online play is literally just racing against ghosts like a time trial, and you can only play with friends, and each person needs their own console in order to be played with, which is just kind of sucky. As far as the versus multiplayer games, Phanto Tag is a blast, which I'm hearing from across the board, but everything else just gets stale very, very quickly, and this is something that a lot of people are probably not going to be returning to. And there's actually some quality of life changes, obviously, with the Switch 2 edition. For instance, you can now zoom the camera all the way out and have it focus on just one player instead of focusing on another. If player 1 dies, for instance, you can just set the game to always focus on player 1 no matter what. You can also change the game when someone runs off screen. Instead of them turning into a ghost and flying back, they'll just warp right to you and can continue going, which is a major plus if you're playing with a younger or lesser experienced Mario player. But the game looks and runs perfect now at a smooth 60 with hardly any frame dips, and it's bumped up to that extra resolution on televisions, which, man, just looking at the captured gameplay on screen right now, this is a beautiful looking game. Overall, IGN states that there's lots of fun new content, but held back by its lackluster versus party games, and gives the game an 8 out of 10. Now, as you might remember from the earlier list of reviews, Nintendo Life was pretty unsatisfied with this game. So they start off talking about the Koopaling levels as well, and said that the levels themselves are uninspired and ridiculously quick to navigate. Once again, when I played through the demo at the store, I noticed that these levels don't have any collectibles in them whatsoever, and this is exactly what Nintendo Life says: no collectibles, no reason to explore anything, just book it to the end and fight the bosses. But the bosses are definitely worth it. Even though they're all super easy, they are very fun to fight and some of the best 2D fights in the entire series, once again like IGN stated. Something Nintendo Life brought up is apparently there's lots of Pikmin Easter eggs in the game now that just pops up in pre-existing levels that you can find, which is pretty cool. So if you want to go look for all the Pikmin, you can do that. Apparently they add absolutely nothing to the gameplay. They're just there just to be there. So yeah, I guess Nintendo's really pushing Pikmin now, because it looks like they're even going to appear in some sort of form in the Mario Galaxy movie as well, thanks to some advertisements. These 70 Toad Brigade challenges are a lot of fun, and they can be quite tough apparently, according to Nintendo Life. All the Brigade challenges in multiplayer games take place in pre-existing levels like I've already mentioned, so do not expect any new levels, more just like remixed versions of them, adding a certain amount of enemies or changing the way you play them with a certain badge that they give you. The Bell Park customization stuff just feels like a waste of time addition. It looks like it's kind of a rip-off Animal Crossing where you're just kind of decorating this hub world, but they said it's just a complete waste of time and they didn't really feel anything from this. The multiplayer gameplay stuff feels like it's trying to be a cheap version of Mario Party or Nintendo Land apparently, and just not quite there. And I can definitely see where they're coming from. They just look like bite-sized mini games, and they don't look like they have a whole lot of variety, and they get old fast. This is me just watching, but this is exactly what the reviewers are saying pretty much. Pretty much all of them are agreeing with this. Nintendo Life thinks that they should have just added an extra world or two instead of cheap party games, because it's just not worth it and they don't see themselves going back to play. Now, Alex from Nintendo Life actually goes on with some personal thoughts at the very end and says that the new badges you unlock made him really excited to see what they were going to be, but they're just a bunch of badges that combine two badges into one effect, which just sucks. So there's not really any new badges added to the game. He got bored literally after around 5 minutes of the online games. 5 of the 6 online attractions are just races, and he claims that they got super boring. The price is just not justified here, and this is just not what he was hoping for a Switch 2 edition of Mario Wonder, which was a game that he really loved when it came out. Overall, Nintendo Life states that the game is a mixed bag. New bosses and missions add more to the base game, where the multiplayer content is just out of place here with its Mario Party vibes, and they gave the game a 6 out of 10. And last but not least, we have Nintendu, and they start off by talking about the single player stuff as well, and state that the bosses remind them of Cuphead bosses, where every fight feels different and you have to adapt fast. They're not necessarily as hard as Cuphead bosses, but just very unique and interesting the way they approach the boss battles this time around, instead of just the same Bowser Jr. boss fights in the base game. The 70 challenges are pretty easy. They did not struggle that much at all, but it strikes a nice balance for a broader audience. Now, this was something that was different compared to the other two reviews, because IGN and Nintendo Life claim that some of the missions do get a little difficult, where Nintendu is saying not really any of them are that difficult from start to end. We get to learn about the history and the origins, apparently, of the Poplins, which is pretty different for something like a 2D or even a 3D Mario game. Learning about some lore of a character is just new all around for a Mario game that's not an RPG. Now, if you want to decorate your hub world with flowers and upgrades, it's best to make sure that you're also playing multiplayer, because it almost forces you to, or you'll be grinding out the same missions over and over and over again in single player until you unlock everything. So that's just something that I thought I'd bring up before you dive into this game, and is wondering, am I supposed to just keep playing these games over and over again? No, you're supposed to be playing the multiplayer and single player modes, even if you're not really that excited for the multiplayer. Speaking of the multiplayer, Phanto Tag is once again the favorite here. It seems like it's the favorite for everybody. Almost every review said the same thing. Like I said, it just seems like that's the ultimate game. Also, it has a cool new Captain Toad level and mini game, where one person plays as Plucky the bird and the other as Captain Toad, where Plucky's making Toad jump and fly around, where Toad has to move around left and right and actually interact with things, which sounds actually like a pretty cool co-op mode. Like I said, the co-op mode seemed to be the love interest of the multiplayer stuff so far. But yeah, when you get into those versus mini games, apparently some mini games are just fun, but of course that means some mini games are pretty boring. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Switching between modes is a real drag apparently to Nintenduo. You have to listen to the talking flower every time. There's a load time and a countdown just for the game to start, and it just feels tedious. You have to keep listening to explanations, and it kills the flow of switching between mini games. I can definitely see this being an issue, especially if there's a lot of them. It's something that reminds me of like Mario Party mini games, where you have to wait for everybody to practice the mini game, ready up, and then you can finally jump into a game. Couch co-op is the best way to play multiplayer games. However, they claim that it's just not worth it to play online in those stupid race modes and stuff. But overall, Nintenduo states that the multiplayer and fluff in between modes holds it back from being absolutely stellar. But overall, they definitely do feel like it's worth picking up, and they give the game a 93 out of 100, which is pretty good for them having a good chunk of complaints. So I'm not quite sure how that score got so high, but from what I've seen so far, it looks like a lot of people are leaning around a 7 to an 8, with some lower and maybe a couple higher as well. It really just comes down to how do you want to enjoy this game? Are you interested in the multiplayer stuff at all? Because it doesn't look like it's going to keep you interested very long. I mean, maybe like a night or two of some fun gameplay with some friends and then you're done. I'm personally getting the game mostly for the single player stuff. I'm super excited to see all the Koopaling transformations and all the boss fights itself, and even the 70 badge challenges. Looking forward to those for sure, but for the multiplayer stuff, I could really care less. Maybe I'll play some with my wife, but let me know what you think down below. Are you excited to dive into the Switch 2 Mario Wonder Edition? Literally tonight at midnight, it goes live. I'm probably going to be downloading it tonight and trying all the single player stuff tonight, so I'll probably be up super late. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you learned something new and you got a lot of information out of today's video. It helps out so much, and I hope you all have a blessed rest of your day. See you guys.